You're in possession, Deputy.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach, and I welcome the opportunity to introduce this bill here tonight, Microgeneration Support Bill 2017, which I introduced into the House here just over a year ago. The bill will reduce energy costs for householders and businesses. It will contribute to the state's requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and grow our renewable energy and reduce our imported fossil fuels. The bill aims to grow small-scale renewable energy, which has a big part to play in our energy future. Microgeneration allows for self-consumption to reduce energy bills, and this bill allows for excess electricity to be exported back into the grid, adding to the state's sources of renewable energy, and very importantly, giving an income back to householders towards the costs of installation of microgeneration, and for businesses also and farmers. The state is way behind on our climate change obligations, and we continue to play catch-up with our European neighbours. The world must treble efforts or face catastrophic climate change, according to a UN report published today on greenhouse gas emissions, and we all heard that loud and clear. This also said that it is extremely unlikely to keep global temperatures below 2 degrees, and they could rise as high as 3.2 degrees, and warned of catastrophic risks of that ahead. The report today is yet another warning to highlight the global situation and also our country and our state's failure to deal with this. The Climate Action Network in June this year put Ireland second last in the European Union when it comes to combating climate change. Drastic and wholesale action is required. And when it comes to climate change, this state is a laggard. Even Taoiseach Leo Varadkar admitted this. Irish householders produce 60% more greenhouse gas emissions than our EU average, because of the huge reliance on oil for heating and fossil fuels, which are key factors. We need to give householders alternatives in terms of renewables. We as a state and as taxpayers are facing hundreds of millions in fines in 2020 and beyond because we have not reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. We have not grown our renewables sufficiently, that portfolio that we need to do. And this is because of this government and past governments' inaction on this. And it is key that we need to take serious the vital requirements to broaden the sources of renewable energy we have in this island. We will need to do this if we are going to combat climate change and create energy security and security of energy supply into the state. We currently import almost $5 billion worth of fossil fuels, and this is not sustainable from an environmental point of view or economically. And electricity will be a vital source of energy in the future, because electricity will be used more into the future for home heating, for heat pumps. We'll be also using it more for transport as we grow the number of electric vehicles on the road, and we need to expand that. And we know that electric vehicles will be the only show in town in 2030. The Irish household and business pays the fourth highest electricity prices in the European Union. We also pay a carbon tax, and we pay a PSO levy, which supports large-scale renewable energy. But energy prices continue to rise, and the major electricity suppliers, they increased their prices, all of them across the board, in July and August of this year. So it's time to allow ordinary people and citizens to reduce their bills, to give citizens, householders and businesses an effort, to involve them in the effort to grow our renewable sources into the future. Today we visited from the Oireachtas Committee on the Environment, Climate Action, we visited Tipperary Energy and Cloughjordan, and seen the Eco Village, and visited projects such as the swimming pool in Neenah Town, a school outside Neenah, a rural school. We visited a household in Neenah, and we've seen at first hand microgeneration at work and energy conservation. We heard how a school halved its energy bills, and if this school could feed in the excess electricity back into the grid at times when it's not being used, it would benefit the school financially, but also it would benefit the state, because we would be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and producing more electricity from a renewable source. What we're proposing here isn't earth-shattering. We must remember that a pilot scheme existed in the past where a tariff was offered by Electric Ireland for microgeneration. A scheme also existed in the north of Ireland. Schemes exist across the European Union. In Germany, for example, payments have been made for decades, and 31% of renewable energy capacity is owned by individuals and farmers owning 10%. The lack of a feed-in tariff here, Minister, is just a further sign of the lack of imagination by this government and previous governments in relation to this when it comes to renewable energy. To date, our renewable energy has almost been completely based on large-scale onshore wind, and how we've gone that hasn't been a good model, and I think we know the reasons why. We didn't involve communities. But realistically, if we're going to combat climate change and create security of energy supply on this island, it will be from a range of sources of energy, such as solar PV, hydro, biogas, small-scale wind and many others. The government must realise the huge potential in microgeneration. You already have a pilot scheme supporting solar PV, and we admit this is a start, but crucially it does not include a feed-in tariff, Minister. There's also a push coming from Europe in relation to microgeneration under what's called the Clean Energy Package, and this will establish a regulatory framework for households for self-consumption under Article 40. We have to see that electricity grid of the near future will be very different than what we have now, and government must see this change and be prepared for this. The future will be very different, with households, businesses and farmers generating their own electricity to supply homes, to supply their own businesses, to fuel their cars, to charge the batteries for their cars. We'll cut down on the 10% of electricity which is lost currently in transmission, and we will get people and communities directly involved in producing energy and in our future. The government's own white paper 2015 stated that, and quote, "We will be exploring the scope to provide market support for microgeneration." The paper also went on to state that the energy system will change from one that is almost exclusively government and utility-led to one where citizens and communities will increasingly be participants in the energy efficiency and in the renewable energy generation and distribution, unquote. So it's a recommendation of the Citizens' Assembly also that we have a feed-in tariff for microgeneration. The Sinn Féin bill has the support of Friends of the Earth, Stop Climate Chaos, An Taisce, Trócaire, farming organisations are looking at it as well, and many others. And we saw it today, Minister. We saw it firsthand. We saw the future in Tipperary. We saw the future in Nina with some of those projects. We saw the future down in Cloughjordan. We saw how it's going to be right across this country. But we have to mainstream that, and we have to do what they're doing right across this state. So I cannot see why any government committed to climate change, and the government says it is, and I hope that they are, committed to addressing our energy security of supply and committed to citizens' involvement in renewable energy, will oppose this bill. So I just ask that we have a coalition here tonight in support of this bill to push forward with it and involve citizens, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and reduce the bills to householders, businesses and farmers in this country. Thank you very much, Concur.
Thank you, Deputy.